Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This is the town hall meeting. We're going to be talking about the LAUSD cell phone ban during school days. Let me share my PowerPoint. Can you see okay? So you're joining Los Angeles 10th District PTSA and Highlands Council of PTAs at this meeting. I would like to start this meeting with a land acknowledgement. The Highlands Council of PTAs acknowledges our presence on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Kichka people and their neighbors. The Los Angeles Basin and Southern Channels were regions that were cared for by their ancestors for thousands of years and continue to be called home today. Indigenous stewardship and rightful claims to these lands have never been voluntarily relinquished nor legally extinguished. We pay our respects to the families, members, and elders of these communities, past, present, and emerging, who live here today and continue stewards, caretakers, and advocates of these lands, river systems, and the waters. As PTA leaders, we undertake an obligation to work together towards undoing the intentional erasure of the Native peoples and their culture and presenting truthful facts about our school's specific occupation of these Kich Nation lands. We encourage learning the truth about their history and committing to working together towards greater understanding, advocacy, and solidarity. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. My name is Anne Kevany. I'm the Highlands Council President, and I would like to introduce our speakers. I would like to introduce Emiliana Dore. Emiliana Dore is Jackie's Community Engagement and Communications Deputy. She represents Jackie in the Atwater, Eagle Rock, Mount Washington, and Glassell Park schools. Emiliana will always be an Eagle Rock kid at heart. She attended Eagle Rock schools and is very proud that her first job was selling tickets at the Eagle Theater. Emiliana is also an LAUSD mom with one student who recently graduated from Marshall High School and another soon-to-be graduate. In addition to representing her schools, Emiliana works with Myra to create our monthly newsletter and to post fun and important updates on our Instagram and Facebook pages. Although Emiliana's background is primarily in theatrical marketing, she has been a longtime supporter of our local public schools. Emiliana has advocated for greater charter school accountability and increased funding for our public schools. She has also written grants for many local schools, including Glen Phyllis Elementary, Atwater Elementary, Irving Middle School, and many others. When she isn't writing, she's probably reading with her cat and drinking tea. Maryhelen Torres is the Administrative Operations for LAUSD School of Operations. Los Angeles native Maryhelen Torres has lived her life giving back to the community that has given so much to her. Starting in her late teens, Maryhelen Torres entered the educational field as a teacher assistant, playground supervisor, working her way up the ladder, becoming a teacher, principal, and now administrative operations in the Division of School Operations, an LAUSD employee for 40 years. As a mother of two, Maryhelen firmly believes in the importance and possibilities that building partnerships with parents is crucial for fostering a supportive and effective educational environment. She believes by nurturing these partnerships, schools can create a collaborative environment that significantly benefits students, families, and the broader community. I would also like for you to meet Leslie Menjivar. Leslie, if you can please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Leslie Menjivar. I'm the 10th District President, and we have 80 schools under our district. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and thank you to LAUSD for being here.
Thank you.
And really quickly, there's a question in the chat that someone asked to explain who Jackie is. So for anyone who doesn't know who Jackie is, Jackie Goldberg is our Los Angeles Unified School Board President, and I'm her deputy in this area and her communications deputy.
Thank you. So LAUSD resolution on phone-free school day, LA Unified becomes the largest school district nationally to approve cell phone ban during school day. On June 18, 2024, LA Unified approved board member Nick Melvoin's resolution to create truly phone-free school days across the district. Studies show that smartphones and social media are distracting kids from learning, eroding their mental health, and stifling in-person social connection. With the implementation of the cell phone ban, the goal is to support students' academic success and well-being. The resolution, which was co-sponsored by Board President Jackie Goldberg, Board Member Kelly Gones, and Board Member Tanya Ortiz Franklin, calls on the district to create a comprehensive implementation policy to take effect in January of 2025.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for that introduction. Yes, we have been working on this policy since the day after the resolution was signed. It was given to us and we took it and ran with it. There was a lot of work that's been done around this policy. So I want to share with you just a little bit, well, actually not a little bit, it might be a lot, of what we've done and how we've come out with the actual policy that is going to be put in place. Now, the meeting itself that you're listening to here, you may not get all the answers just yet because the policy has not been put into place yet. We've just are moving in the direction where we're going to be rolling it out soon. But as a parent, you have not received any information about it. You have not got any letters, any Connect Ed calls. Maybe you have received some invitations to parent meetings that we put out that we have been working with across the district. So with that being said, I'm going to share a little bit about the work, the why, and what it is we're doing. There will be time for questions and answers at the end. So if you want to go ahead and put them in a chat, if it's something that absolutely you need an answer to in between, please raise your hand, your virtual hand, and one of our panelists will help me to get your question read. So with that, I want to go ahead and move to the next slide. So just a little bit of background. So as Anvi said, the policy was put into place. The resolution was signed on June 16th. And the purpose behind the resolution was to really support the mental health of students while creating an environment where they did feel safe, where students feel safe at. The phone-free school day will result in an increase of academic performance, but we also want to see an increase in students socializing with one another. And we're also hoping to see a decrease in cyberbullying or any other issues that have been going on with the cell phone or with social media. Because a lot of what we have also it works around social media and what it is we are trying to prevent our students to do and stay off of during the school day. So like I said, why is this needed? Well, basically it's needed because we are committed to supporting the mental health and well-being of our students so that students feel safe, welcome, and excited to learn, and that they're ready for the world. So this is what the why is of why it is we want to do this. Our purpose, once again, is we talked about support the students with mental health. We also want to increase student interaction. I'm not sure if you've ever been to a school site during nutrition, lunch, or recess, and you see students all gathered in one group, but guess what? They're all on their cell phones and they're not socializing or communicating with each other. So that's the other piece that we want to accomplish through this resolution. We also want to make sure we align with California and the federal and legal requirements that are changing rapidly with this, and of all of that to create our phone-free school day. So what does the research say? I'm sure you're not going to be surprised as we talk a little bit about what the research says. Definitely, we already know that the research states that being on your cell phone for long amounts of times and being on social media is harmful to student mental health. We have seen and we have read a lot of articles. We've met with other groups. We've met with external partners, and they all say the same thing, is that it being on social media and on your phones throughout the day, it really increases teenage anxiety, creates depression, and in some case, even suicidal ideation. clearly has a negative effect on academic performance. And we have seen a higher rate of cyberbullying and physical fights because what does everybody want to do? Record everything on their phone so they can post it. We want to make sure that students are not becoming dependent anymore so on their phones, and that the other piece of it is we have found is the exposure and the harm that to inappropriate content for students. And this is either by predators reaching out to them. This is either by seeing things that they shouldn't be seen. So it's a lot of information that we have gained and we have seen that we are trying to avoid here. So once again, what the research says is that's a potential risk for the social media content, you know, exposure to predatory behavior, you know, hate-based content, you know, social comparison and low self-esteem, especially with our young ladies and our young teenagers, is one of the things that we see a great amount of. And also the overstimulation on the reward center of the brain. It's kind of like the students they need, oh, who's posting what? Wait, I'm behind. I didn't see my post, things like that. And also we want to make sure that students are not feeling excluded or having problems focusing in class. Clearly, if they're on their phones, they're not going to be able to focus. So just a little bit of history of what we did in order to reach the consensus of the policy and where we are now is our engagement process has been taking place since last June. We have held many meetings across the district. We started with our employees. We met with classified and certificated employees. We met with principals. We met with principals who are implementing already existing policies and with principal groups who are not implementing anything. We have met with students across the district. We've met with students across the district, and we have met with parents across the district. Every region was required to have 2 to 3 meetings at the region office with some of these same slides that you're seeing here in order to share and to explain to parents where we are and what's going to be happening with the policy and what we found. But most importantly, one of our last meetings we held was with our external partners. So we held a meeting with external partners, which was very interesting. We had school districts from all over the nation: Chicago, Texas, Oregon, New York, Maryland, all over the district, with superintendents who are already implementing the program in their schools. On that meeting, we also had medical doctors and we also had researchers. We had a researcher from Brown University and a researcher from, don't remember, one was from Cambridge, one was from Stanford. So we invited them all onto our meeting to give us just a little bit more of the background of what they have found and what they were looking at. So I'm going to share a little bit of that, of what we found with them. So I think our most powerful meeting we had was with our external partners. And when I say our external partners, these are our superintendents, our professor from Brown, our professor from North Carolina. And looking at that, even listening to the superintendents, some of the stuff they found was very interesting, that even with all of the research, the books we read, it was not what we had expected. So it gave us this opportunity to kind of engage and share. And I am going to say that a lot of districts wanted to come on to the meeting because they wanted to see what we were doing in LA Unified, because often when we implement a policy, other districts just follow suit to what we are doing. So one of our researchers found that technology, yes, it's good, but it's also bad. And they talked about certain content and software impacts of what we're seeing. You know, the urges don't stop and the kids are overly stressed because they're constantly trying to keep up. One of the other researchers said that, you know, it shows an increase in interaction among peers when cell phones are limited. So looking at that, that was one of the big takeaways that our researcher from Brown University shared with us. And it was also the same thing that all of the superintendents had stated was they have shown an increase of interaction among students, academic performance, and a decrease in cyberbullying and actual physical fights on their campus as the cell phones were removed from students. And all of our districts that worked with us and that came onto the meeting had this, everybody had the exact same thing. And they shared the positive results that they had got. Now, the other thing, one of our medical doctors shared that that they were seeing a direct effect of cell phone usage resulting in increased bullying and suicidal attempts. Now, this was something they had saw, but one of the other really impactful statements that he made to us was he talked about the overdose visits of teenage students in the ER as a result of access to drug purchases on social media. Students can now go on their phone, look for drugs, order drugs, and somebody will deliver it to them. And what he's finding is it's first-time use. The first-time use of drugs that students had bought through their cell phones and brought onto their person or delivered to their home or however the students accessed it is with this overdose that they saw. So that was really powerful, that something we hadn't read about or something that we hadn't seen. And this doctor was local, and it was just one of the things he really wanted to share with us. Some of the other things are that some of our districts across the nation, they looked at, they were enforcing the storing their device. Some of the things that they looked at were in implementing it, they looked at storage products, they looked at lockers, they looked at enforcing the storing of where to find the phones or where they were going to put them. But for the most parts, they said that parents were happy that the phones or in the book bags, in their backpacks and their book bags, just in case there was an emergency. A lot of the districts stated that we were not removing phones. They said what really made parents happy is they were not taking the phones and locking them up somewhere. What they were doing was students were just putting them in their book bags and putting them away. So if there wasn't an emergency, students would have access to them immediately. They also noted, one of the superintendents from Roseville City School District stated that he noticed a reduction in referrals and he noticed the increased student engagement. So like I said, this was a lot of things that they came across, and just as a positive, school hallways are loud and students say that they're less anxious now because they're not on their phones and they can go ahead and interact. So these are some of the results that we found with our external partners across the district. Okay. Now, what we're looking at here is as we address the ban for our cell phone free schools, we have to look at it kind of like we look at instruction. So we look at it in 3 different levels. We look at it as the universal level where we're going to say, okay, everybody put your phones away, and that's going to be okay. But then we might have a targeted group of students who are struggling. They may be struggling a little bit more and still need their phones and just want to check it just one more time. And then we're going to have our intensive group. And in talking to our external partners, they saw this. They couldn't believe how we had leveled it, but they saw this in each of their districts and how they addressed each one. So when we shared this slide, they were like, we definitely need to see that slide, because if we look at it as how do we help our universal students? Well, we just remind them, we send Blackboard Connect messages home to parents. We remind students at assemblies. We have posters around, everybody put your phone away. But then what are we going to do? How are we going to help the students who need their phones a little bit more, that targeted group? Well, maybe they can meet with other students who are feeling the same way. We can invite them to groups, maybe a Zoom meeting. And then we talk about our intensive group. Those are the red students. And these are students, and I don't want to say students and parents, but these are students who we feel are really going to have a difficult time releasing their phones and putting them away. So we want to look at possibly a collaboration with parents, maybe having parent conferences to help the students get through, you know, maybe having them sign an individual contract. Also, maybe we could have a Zoom meeting for these students who just really need that extra support in order to get them to where they need to be, so they're not so dependent on their phones anymore. Okay, so how are we going to address this? How are we going to address the phone dependency? What are we going to do to help the students get through this phone dependency? Well, some of the things we want to do is we've already started working with our PBIS team. We've been working with our mental health supporters. We want to be able to provide mental health supports for our students in schools, maybe talking to our psychiatric social worker, maybe talking to counselors. We also want to change things during nutrition and lunch. We want to plan things. Maybe we're going to play music. Maybe we're going to have an intramural. Maybe we're going to plan fun activities for students during the nutrition and lunchtime. The other piece is we want to be able to have students join support groups. Maybe clubs can be meeting at nutrition or lunchtime, so students have somewhere to go where they can engage and talk with students among themselves. You know, we can do check-ins during advisory. We also talked about a couple of the school districts had a wellness room filled with activities of engagement for students who are really struggling and what we can support them with. We also want to make sure that we're looking at restorative practices. What's going to happen if a student has their phone? What is it? You know, everybody's saying, well, what's the punishment? What's going to be the punishment? Well, every school has their own policy of what they're going to do. But is it really necessary? Is it something we really need to do? How about we just give a reminder to put your phone away? Hey, Maryhelen, don't forget, put your phone away. If we see Maryhelen with her phone out again, we might want to remind her, oh, Maryhelen, don't forget, there's a new policy. You know, we want everybody to adhere to the phone-free school day policy. Don't forget, we have a new policy in place. Maybe, oh, Maryhelen, you still have your phone out. Maybe you want to go talk to your counselor. Do you need to talk to somebody? Or maybe we need to talk to a parent or guardian of, you know, what's going on and how we can help support those students. These are the type of things we want our schools to utilize in order to support the policy. Now, what we found and what other districts shared was a lot of times it's not the students, it's the parents. It's the parents who, well, I got to call my daughter. I need to do that. I'm just as guilty. I had 2 kids in LA Unified as well. And one day my daughter's phone was taken from her and I was the one texting her. So I'm just as guilty as everybody else. So a lot of times it's us as parents, and how do we work with our parents in order to help? You know, do we have check-ins with them? How do we help to get them through that? Then everybody talks about exemptions, and in the resolution, it talks about the exemptions of where we are. When they passed the resolution at the board meeting, they talked about some of the exemptions, and then a couple of the board members wanted to add another piece of it. So of course, there's going to be exemptions. You know, what about our students with a health need? We have students on their phone with their app where they have, you know, they use their phone app to check their blood pressure, they check their sugar level. What about students with IEPs? We're working with our special ed department to see if there are any students with IEPs that may have accommodations, a 504 plan. The other one that one of the board members requested was for our newcomer students to assist them with translation. You know, so if they want to have a conversation, if they want to utilize that. The phones do have some really good tools to utilize. However, we want to be able to make sure that it's being used in the proper manner. We're going to ask schools to design a process of when students have an individual emergency or need to contact a parent. Sometimes there are things that may happen. So we're going to ask schools to, what is going to be your policy? When I was a principal, kids would go to the office, they would use the office phone, but this means we need to retrain our office staff and our school administrative assistants to let them know that kids may be coming in. They're going to need to come in to use a phone or whatever questions or things that they may have. Now, oh, let me go back. Okay, so, so those are some of the things we wanted to look at. And so now we looked at clearly the benefits and the considerations. We definitely want to look at the benefits and the considerations of where we are. So in looking at that, clearly academic benefits, safety benefits, and social well-being benefits. But on top of that, we also have considerations, like academically, some of the challenges or some of the considerations are, modern learning, digital literacy. How about in safety, communication in emergency situation? I know that's what all the parents are thinking about. And then we have the social emotional well-being and kids being included and kids not feeling isolated. So those are definitely some of the considerations and the benefits that we are talking about and looking at that for everybody to consider. So now we're going to look at some of the products that we are going to utilize to support the implementation. There's a lot of products out there. There's a lot of things. And so some of the products we looked at are pouches, like just a regular pouch, their own pouch where students would keep it. Portable boxes for classrooms. We've seen a couple of schools. We have visited a lot of our schools that have already put policies into place. And one of the schools, which I had never seen before, it's like a box, it's about this big. And there's a slot for 36 phones. All the students put their phones in there as they come in. When they leave, they take them out. It's kind of like the pouches you see in the first picture, but it's a little more secure. And the good piece of that is if there's an emergency, there's an earthquake, there's emergency, the teacher can grab the box and everybody goes outside and then the kids would have their phones. It's the same with the pouch, the pocket charts that are hanging. The other piece of it is locker stations and designated areas. This one we are removing. And then of course the portable pouches for classrooms. So they're different, there are much different type of products. Like for instance, like the one we're going to remove, the locker stations, that's not going to work anymore because the more we got through the research, we can't do that because if we, for instance, mount lockers on the wall and there's an emergency, we can't expect kids to go and grab them and try to find them. Some schools said, well, can we use our existing lockers? No, because that's removing them from the students. What we want to make sure is that the phone is in an eye proximity of the students where it can get to immediately or in their backpack. So then that way, if there's an emergency, they already have their phone with them. So these are just a few of the products that we're looking at. And I believe the resolution says that schools are going to make their own decision. They're going to make their own decision through their local school leadership of what product that they're going to work, because I was an elementary school principal. So for me, I may not need anything. I just tell the kids, I don't want to see your phone. Don't bring your phone. But with high school kids and middle school students, that's a little different. So they may need a little bit of help and support. But every school will make a decision what they want to use. Now, some schools may utilize two things. So for instance, I may have a pouch like this hanging pouch as an elementary school principal. And I just tell my students, everybody put your phones away. Maybe if I see a student with their phone 5, 6, 7, 8 times, and after talking to parents and it's not working, maybe that phone needs to stay with me in the principal's office. I don't know. Not a plan, not what we're looking at doing, because we really want to empower our students. If the students don't believe what we're doing is healthy and good for their mental health, then they're going to continue on. So the goal is to really empower our students to understand the reason why we're doing this and to help support themselves. So those are just some of the products we're looking at. Oh, here's the box, the portable storage box. So these are the options here. Put your phone in a backpack, portable storage, magnetic pouches, Velcro pouches, or the phone holder. But no matter which of these a school decides to use, the phone must remain turned off. So the phone will have to be turned off before it's placed in any of these. Not on airplane mode, but turned off. So these are some of the products that we've been working with and looking through. So that was a lot of information. So I'm going to stop sharing And I'm gonna go back here. So that was a lot of information. Envy, I don't know where you want to do questions or where we are. Like I said, I will try to answer as much as I can. But remember, a lot of it I really can't say yet because we have not shared the policy yet. Now, granted, the policy is on my desk. It's sitting there. We just recently shared the board informative with the board members. I want to say just on Friday, but we're still not ready to bring it out yet. We always have to let them know first. But we're really close to rolling it out. And when we do start to do that, we have already put together an entire resource packet. First things, Blackboard Connect messages to parents. Second thing, letters to parents. What is going on? Some of the why of what we're doing, the things we're doing, some of the reasons how we're going to implement it. The minute we begin to roll it out, all of those questions will be answered. So I'm going to stop, Envy, at this point. So if there's questions, maybe I can help answer.
There are 2 questions right now. The first one, actually 3. The first one is, how can any policy be implemented and enforced by individual schools, teachers, considering that parents are the ones that gives the phones to the kids and often are the ones texting and calling during school hours, especially in middle and high school?
Yep, that's correct. Remember, I said I was the first guilty one when my daughter's phone got taken away. And I was the one, and that's what I said is we have to educate our parents and explain to them why we're doing what we're doing and hopefully get them on board. So then that way they can help support what it is that we're doing for the betterment of our students and not only for their academic growth, but for their mental health and to add some of that socialization into school.
And we can I
Thank-
share too, I wanted to let the parents know that we've been talking about this subject quite a bit with our student leadership advisory council, which is comprised of high school students from across board District 5. And it was very interesting. We really thought there would be more resistance from the students. And we were sort of surprised that the students overall are actually pretty supportive of this, especially the ones who have it in their schools already this year, because some of our principals implemented it a little bit earlier. So it started at the beginning of this school year. And many of our students told us that they've seen more interaction. The kids are talking to each other more at lunch and nutrition. They are not seeing, exactly what the research said. They're not seeing as many fights on campus. They're not seeing as much bullying happening. And also they mentioned actually something that the doctor mentioned, which is the drug deals. So there are some I know we all, I'm an LAUSD parent, exact same thing. I know all of us go to the worst case scenarios and worrying about being able to reach our kids. But the reality is our kids are dealing with really hard scenarios every day that impact their mental well-being, their ability to do well in school. And that's what we're trying to address right now. That's what this policy is about.
Thank you. Another question is, will students be sent to the deans for having phones? Because that is what is happening at some high schools. It's very disappointing. They're treating it very militaristic.
So the policy itself hasn't been implemented yet. So that might be a school that has its existing policy. And once the new policy goes into place, and I can say that it's second semester because that's what the resolution says when we come back from winter break. And you saw my monitoring, I had that slide of what we talked about. What's going to happen if Leslie has her phone out? Leslie, put your phone away. Leslie, just a reminder, we have a policy. We want to be able to have kids understand why we're doing it, sending them to the dean or anything else. I'm not sure what's going on now, but once the new policy is put into place, there's actual language in there that states if a school has an existing policy, they must follow the new guidelines that we are implementing as well. So hopefully we won't be seeing any more of that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
What about smartwatches?
Oh, that's right. I didn't mention that. This policy is for cellular phones and technology as well. Not only smart watches, but smart glasses as well. we've already caught on to the bandwagon of some of the students who have the glasses with the cameras on it. So those will be implemented as included as well. And that is definitely in the policy language. Mhm.
Thank you. What about field trips?
Oh, field trips, that's in there as well also. And that's going to be dependent on how the school is going to roll it out. Technically, the resolution says during instructional time. Now, instructional time, a field trip is instructional time. So that would definitely depend on the school and the school's local school leadership of what it is they want to, how they want to roll that out and what they want to decide on. A couple of the other things we looked at, we have a couple of schools where students have dual enrollment. For instance, like the school my daughters used to go to, the students used to walk down, some of the students would walk down the street a block away to go to the skill center in order for them to take advanced classes or different classes. So students who do that with dual enrollment, students will be able to utilize their phones, yes. Mhm.
Thank you. Reading the evidence from other schools, it's clear you are moving towards keeping phones with kids, likely in their backpacks. We already have this policy and it's not working. The teachers are interrupted constantly, cheating, so on. So before school, lunch, passing period, and after school, they're on the phones.
Yes, so remember the resolution, the new resolution states that phones will not be allowed during nutrition, lunch, passing period, and things like that. So once again, we want our students to self-regulate themselves in order to realize and to remember that they need to be off their phones, and then they will go from there. And the other piece of it is what we're doing, I think, is the entire district will now be following the policy. The entire district, one of our researchers said that kids are, the students call it FOMO, fear of missing out. FOMO, that's what the students call it, FOMO, fear of missing out. But what are they going to be missing out on if everybody's going to be off their phones? So we're pushing in the direction where that way students are going to be able to monitor, regulate themselves. So then that way everybody will be off their phones. And it is different because the policy we have now in place, it doesn't say nutrition, it doesn't say lunch, and it's not a resolution. And there's also, I think somebody's going to talk about the law in just a minute or so. It's actually a new law that's passed that will come into place after. Mhm.
Okay.
And also, I think you said too, that they will be turning the phones off. I think our current policy
correct.
just says your phone has to be put away, but this current one, your phone has to be turned off. So
That's correct.
that's a difference. And someone asked if each school will have their own policy. It's not exactly their own policy. Every school is going to have the same general rules that we've been outlining here, but they will have a little bit of leeway for how they implement it. For instance, an elementary school might not have to, do as rigid of a process as the middle school and high schools will, because they're going to be, slowly training their kids to not do it because they're more used to having them out. But each school will have a little bit, like some of them are using the pouches right now, who are already using it. Some schools may just have them put it in the backpacks because we're finding that works really well. So it really will depend on the school.
Another question, how will we get this new policy? Will the student parent handbook be updated? Will we have to sign something?
The student parent handbook, which comes out of our office also, this parent student handbook will be updated electronically, but because it's already printed, it'll have to wait till next year. But we will be sending letters home, notifications home to parents regarding guidelines and policy and exactly what you said, Emiliana, is some schools may even implement a more stringent policy, because we do have some schools now who have a more stringent policy of where we are. For instance, one of the schools we had visited, they've been working with the policy for 10 years now. Actually, it's been quite a long time since cell phones, they started to see the disruption of it. And so in their policy, students I think they have pouches, put their phone in their pouches. And then at the end of the day, because if the students are after school and they're on the playground or they're in the after school program, well, instructional time is over, so they can utilize their phone. But in this school, the principal gives 15 minutes. At that 15 minutes, students can text their parents, don't forget to pick me up. I need to get poster paper. You know, I'm gonna have dinner here. I'm staying on campus. We have practice till 6, whichever may be. And then that after that 15 minutes, their policy at their school is they can no longer use them after school. And it has worked successfully. So we see all different types. Yeah, we see all different policies. Yeah. You know, I did notice that there was a question in Spanish. I don't know if the interpreter can.
Actually, I'm gonna add it to your chat so you can read it in English.
Okay.
I think I missed one too, that someone asked what will happen in case of an emergency. And again, that will depend sort of school to school. We can't really answer that question right now because the
Mhm.
policy itself hasn't been released and we don't know what each school will do in those situations. But we can say it is part of the policy that students do need to have some way to access them in an emergency.
That's correct. Right. That is correct. During the digital era, will be able to return to your progress practical during your. Okay. So I'm not sure if that's a question, Leslie, or not. Maybe you could help me out.
I added in the chat. Can you see it? In
I-
English.
I can see it in English, but it kind of I'm not sure what the question is. Let me see. Understand teachers are typically, okay, no, it's not that one.
I think it may have to do with using technology as part of the instruction. And so they
Something that was very interesting to me that one of our doctors stated was, he talked about the sleep deprivation with our students because they're on their phones late at night and this. And one of the things he says he asks the students are, why are you on the phone late? And they're like, well, my assignment is due at midnight. And I was like, midnight? And he's like, yeah, the teacher says by the end of the day. So the end of the day is 11:59 midnight. This is really interesting. And so he said to us, why can't we just have assignments due at 9 o'clock at night? Why do they have to be midnight? So that's definitely a conversation I had with our labor partners, because we also met with labor partners, in regards to teachers having assignments due at 9 o'clock instead of midnight. Because then at least we know they're not on the phone. My daughter would always say, oh, I'm doing my homework. No, you're not doing your homework. I know you're not doing your homework. But that was me. So it was a really interesting fact that he said, yeah, why do we have to say the end of day, midnight, instead of have it due by 9 o'clock? So that's definitely something that we are visiting, yes.
That's a good point. Let me go ahead and share my PowerPoint again, and we're going to be talking about the 2 laws that have been passed recently. So I want to talk about the Assembly Bill 3216, which was signed into law by Governor Newsom on September 24th. This new law requires the governing board of every local educational agency, county office of education, and charter school to develop and adopt no later than July 1st, 2026. As you can see, LAUSD is ahead, a policy to limit all or prohibit pupils' smartphone use while the pupils are in class or at a school site. Between now and July 1st of 2026 deadline for policy adoption, school committees will likely be debating what types of limitations they wish to impose on student cell phone use. After initial adoption, districts are required to review and update their policies every 5 years. In addition, districts are required to include significant stakeholder participation, and that's what we've been doing at our district as they develop their policies in order to ensure that the policies are responsive to the unique needs and desires of pupils, parents, and educators in each community. Oops, sorry. The new law includes some exceptions saying pupils cannot be prohibited from possessing or using smartphone in the case of an emergency or perceived threat of danger. Educators can grant permission for smartphone use when appropriate. Individual students may be exempted from the rule based on a physician's determination or as required in an individualized education program. Um, I'm going to, you will have access to this EdSource article on cell phone bans becoming more common in California schools. Ms. Torres already talked about the external stakeholders that they've met and some of the cell phone bans that they have implemented. In California, we have 5 schools that were interviewed by EdSource in terms of cell phone ban. Lincoln Unified School District, Santa Barbara Unified, San Francisco Unified, Roseville City School District near Sacramento, and Folsom Cordova Unified near Sacramento. And it just shows you why they're imposing the cell phone ban. The same thing, mental health is a priority for a lot of the school districts. And there are consequences that in terms of if the student is caught using the phone during instructional time, students may be referred for counseling or therapist if necessary, and that in the parents are included in the planning of the program, which is very important. With Folsom Cordova Unified, they no longer permit cell phones, smartwatches, or other mobile communication devices anywhere on campus during the school day, and high school students cannot use them in the classrooms. They were using pouches last year, but this year, instead of using pouches, they just asked their students to turn off the phones and put them away. And they will not give them warnings, though, and students are sent straight to the office if they're caught using their phone during instructional time.
And also I just wanted to clarify that the question that the parent was asking in Spanish is why we don't use the technology instead of taking it away since it has uses in the classroom. And I just wanted to remind parents that students will still have their Chromebooks, so they still will be doing quite a bit of technology-based learning while they're in the classroom. We're still preparing them for a world where they'll be using a lot of technology. But the Chromebooks, they're a little safer. Yeah, they don't have the access to all of the internet stuff that they are getting on their phones. They have more restrictions on them, so we can just protect their mental health a little bit more. So it still has a lot of the things that they would do on their phone as far as interacting with their teachers and lessons and that sort of thing, but they can use their Chromebooks rather than their phones while they're in the classroom.
Emiliana or Maryhelen, can you explain in a case of a shutdown or a big emergency, what are we gonna do as parents for the students?
Well, one thing, emergency situations are hard for us to completely answer because it'll depend partly on the school, the way that they implement the policy. But remember that it is part of this and part of the state law that parents or that students will have access to their phones one way or another during emergencies. But one thing we want parents to know we didn't talk about, that we also have been talking to first responders and people like that. That was part of implementing this policy is it's not terribly safe for kids to have their phones in emergencies. It clogs up the emergency lines. You don't necessarily want, the lights and the noises and things like that draw attention to your children in an emergency. So there are a lot of safety concerns also with using cell phones during an emergency. But it is part of this policy that they will have some form of access. I know that Maryhelen can probably speak to that better than I can, but there is a part, and I know I'm an LAUSD parent too, and I feel the same tug that all of you do, but we really are trying to listen to the experts who are telling us that that's not necessarily making our kids safer. Maybe feels like a little lifeline to us, but it might not actually be making our kids safer.
That is correct. On some of the research we found, in the district and the Division of School Operations, we get a lot of the after action reports from the school shootings across the nation. Sometimes we even send people over to the state and the city of where it's at so we can learn of different things, and we often learn a lot. And one of the things at our last shooting is we found that law enforcement actually had a difficult time communicating with each other because there was so much cell phone usage. And I know, Anvi, I know you have an example too, but let me just say this piece quickly, is because of so much cell phone usage going on that they were having trouble with their radios, with their mode of communications. Also, the other piece of that was in an active shooter case, we teach our kids to hide. One of the things is to shut the door, lock the door, put the paper on, on the window, and to wait quietly until you hear from law enforcement. Well, in one of the cases, and one of the school shootings was the students were doing that, and as the active shooter was knocking on the door, everybody was quiet, and then all of a sudden somebody's phone went off because somebody was calling them. And these are the type of things that we've studied and we've looked at and we've talked about, and it's just, I know, Envy, you were gonna share something, I think. I don't know if this is the appropriate time or not, but.
It's my colleague who's a former high school teacher. They were in a lockdown and they were in lockdown for about 3 hours, and they were getting ready to be released by the officers, police officers, when a student actually texted their parent, gave them incorrect, inaccurate information, and the parent shared it with the law enforcement. And so the law enforcement then had to confirm that information, which was incorrect. And so they had to be in lockdown for an additional 5 hours when they could have been released 3 hours earlier, because of incorrect and inaccurate information that was sent out.
And we see that every day. We see that every day in operations. A school will be put in lockdown because of police activity in the area. And 10 minutes later, we have phone calls in our office that there's an active shooter at a school.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
not, it's because kids are texting parents, and then it kind of goes from there. It's hard. It's a hard situation. Like I said, I had 2 girls in the district. It's a very difficult situation to work on how we're going to get through that piece of it.
We have 3 minutes left. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to set up another meeting for our PTA, PTSA members. We would like to talk about the 2 new laws and how the PTA, PTSA can support LA Unified School District. We will schedule another meeting, and we would like to thank Ms. Torres and Ms. Dore for a great presentation and for a very informative presentation, because we really appreciate what you're doing, and that hopefully the PTA can collaborate with LA Unified School District in order to support this new policy. We also would like to thank our Spanish interpreter, Alex, for your hard work and for interpreting. I know it's really hard. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Can I say one more thing before we move
Yes,
on?
definitely.
I just want all the parents to know that once we start to roll out the program, we in our office, we have already created another presentation, kind of similar to this, but looking at this, that principals will be sharing with coffee with the principal, and they'll be able to answer some of these specific questions that I can't answer yet. But we've already created the PowerPoints. I have them ready to go, along with connected messages and letters. So once, I say maybe within the next 2 weeks, you'll start hearing from us. So that's exactly, so you actually got a kind of a jump on getting the knowledge. So I want to thank you guys for inviting me as well to share where we are with this, and any way we can help, let me know.
Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.